So this time, casual wear.
Not very casual, but closer to casual wear.
Yeah, and notes. How about that?
Perfect.
We're
going to have to go over the notes because I don't have any.
Don't worry. We'll go over the notes. Hey, welcome back to, now this is going to be episode number 1 of our podcast that, of course, has a new name because every name...
It was taken.
Every name. But I mean, the thing is, everybody did a podcast for about, 20 minutes, everybody did a podcast. So it's time expired.
Perfect.
Which kind of describes a lot about everything. We do
some of which we can share with you, some of which we can't.
Right. And we're getting closer to our personal times being expired too. So anyways, we had a great episode 0 where we kind of did this thing and then we asked for some public feedback and we got a bunch of it.
So thank you everybody for actually taking the time to listen and thank you for the feedback because at first I was going to say, we wouldn't do it or it wouldn't be as fun without people listening. This is kind of what we do anyway.
Right.
We just sit around and chat about this stuff. So we would still do it. We just wouldn't record it. And we do, it was very fun to hear what your thoughts were and the ideas for what we should be talking about on here.
Okay. So I thought one of the big ones, which I kind of wanted to know, you wanted to know, did people actually want more banter, the kind of stuff that we close newscasts with, that we both.
But you're talking about during the newscast itself.
Well, yes, during the newscast, I think people enjoy that. I think we've had a pretty good run of that. But did they want more of it even outside of newscasts? Yeah. And I think the overwhelming response was, you guys have a little bit of chemistry. As we said in episode 0, we actually get along fantastically. Right. Despite the games we play with each other. So that was just one of the things. And another thing that people pointed out, wanted to know more about was changes. Changes with us, changes at the station, over the years, changes in town, because we've been here a long time.
Yeah. I was born and raised here, so I, grew up here, obviously. And I've been around for a long, long time. You've been around for more than 20, 25 years as well. So
yeah.
And actually, we can kind of tie those things together. We can't talk about all the changes in this 1 20 or 30-minute episode 1 here. We can talk about that over multiple episodes. But it is kind of worth pointing out that as far as what happens during the newscast in terms of banter and that sort of thing, that has changed over time too, right? We've had some times where they really encourage people to talk and share more personal and be a little bit more personable on the air, share some personal experiences. And then times when we've had management that just really wants it to be completely straight, just give the news.
Right. And the current management is really, I would say, fairly hands off, they're open to it. Except there are some things we will not be able to talk about in this podcast because there are some active changes have to do with some restructuring that's going on that we need to allow that to happen. And then we'll come back here and we'll discuss some of
mostly after you notice it or don't, right? So if you're watching the newscast and you notice changes, then you want some answers or what's going on, then we can sort of talk about those changes.
And this is a good opportunity. People can watch this and say, what about that? And ask us if you notice something, bring it out.
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the other changes that people wanted to talk about is our good friend Nina, who left. And it's interesting. Richard just happened to be off on her last night. So she and I did the goodbye. Very hard to do these goodbyes. Not that we would know.
Right.
Because
we haven't said goodbye yet.
Not yet. But they're very tough. They're very emotional. And you can imagine the management doesn't really want to over-advertise the changes are happening. But changes always happen here. Nina was fantastic. And she and her boyfriend moved to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And he's a television producer. And Nina has gotten into another line of work. She's fantastic. She has been texting us constantly.
Every day.
So far.
That's probably worth pointing out too. People always, and we started this whole thing with, are we really friends? And of course we are, right? But this job is a little strange And I mean, not only is this sort of, things that we do strange, but also the environment is a little bit different. The work time, nobody works an 8 to 5 job in television. So you really get to know each other, I think, in a different, I also work a teaching job, but that's also not a normal job. I've never had like a corporate 8 to 5 job. But my take on it is that you spend time with each other, with your coworkers, in such a different way and in such a different time that you get to know them. It's almost like you become a family of sorts, right? So you're texting outside of work, and you care about what each other are doing, and you care about where everybody else has gone. So it's not like these people come into your life and they're here for a couple of years or 3 years and have a contract, and they just kind of disappear and you get the next one. It looks like that on TV, but it's really not like that. It's like a weird kind of a combination of maybe like getting a divorce you don't want, or seeing your kids go off to college or something. It's a combination of sort of like bittersweet, I guess.
Yeah, so you run into everybody. Kathy Koretich, you see her around town. Jeanette, we still see. Karina, who we worked with for many years, you in the morning and at night. Yeah. She is a spokesperson for PG&E, so now
Tony Capola. We run into them professionally, so you do run into all these people.
Yeah,
who stay.
Right, exactly. So, and by the way, one little tidbit about Nina, there's a lot of them, but so one of the things that she texts me about all the time, she loves the game The Sims. Now, she didn't talk to you a ton about it, but she would create these horrible people and get them into highly, interesting scenarios. And I think that was cool about her, and what not a lot of people knew. She was also a news junkie, morning, noon, night, all the time. News, crazy. So
even this afternoon, she was at the gym watching us on the live stream doing the news.
Yeah, it's okay, Nina. You can take a day off finally.
Exactly.
Okay, so other things, and I think we'll probably just have to do maybe another one on it, but changes in the area. I think that's probably one whole podcast because there've been a lot of them. You've lived in SLO, you've lived
in North
up the hill. I live up the hill right now. And I've lived pretty much everywhere. I've lived in the 5 cities, in Santa Maria and Morro Bay, SLO. So I've got some thoughts on all of those communities.
I just want to say before I forget, though, that I think sometimes it runs the gamut for me. Sometimes I think to myself, it hasn't really changed over the past, 35, 40 years. Obviously, there are some huge changes, and people brought up things like the big box stores that we didn't have before. But in a way, it hasn't changed that much. The character, I think, of the community, I think how much people interact with one another, how much they know, the small town nature, I don't think has changed that much. It's one of those things where, you look back at your life and you think, boy, that time frame seemed like it took forever. And at the same time, it took just a couple minutes, like you look back and you think, it felt like a long time, but it also felt like it was just overnight. I think the changes are like that too. Sometimes I look at the community and I think it hasn't really changed that much. When you walk through downtown San Luis Obispo, it's very similar to walking through downtown San, the structure, the buildings, that kind of thing hasn't changed a whole lot, really, considering.
But the subtleties have.
A lot.
So, there were no big box stores around here. The Delidio Ranch project, as was proposed, it would have had a highway overpass on Prado, which we still don't have. Right. And it would have had a green space, and people flipped out about big box stores. So it gets voted down, and then there's a judgment, and ultimately it's dead. But then what do we get? We get Costco, Target, Dick's Sporting Goods. We get all of the big players out in that general area anyways. So I think this area is conflicted about progress. And if you look at downtown, the rents in downtown San Luis Obispo have gotten to the point where it used to be lots of mom and pop shops, and there still are. But if you look at the hotel developments, these are higher end developments, and a lot of those stores have changed too. So, I think that is happening. And I also think we're kind of rubbers meeting the road on things like how big should these towns be? How affordable should these towns be? I don't live in San Luis Obispo, to be quite frank, and it's not a station complaint or anything like that. I can't afford it. I think a lot of can't afford it. And it's, again, it's a topic.
It's always been, the affordability issue has always been here. But the way that we've addressed it has sort of changed over time too. Right. There was a whole lot at the beginning of my career, there was a whole stretch of time where there was this really slow growth policy. So, when you were really trying to actively prevent growth, actively prevent new housing development, then of course the prices of housing went sky high.
But the resistance, I don't think, is so much municipal anymore as it is from the NIMBYs. Who show up, and to your point about this area hasn't changed a lot, I think there's so much fear that it will change that sometimes it gets in the way of like legitimate progress. We probably need to have some realistic kind of areas where we grow. Can this place always have 2-lane 101 running through it? You get 2 car accidents and nobody's going anywhere, and you get an issue on the 166 or the I-5, and all of a sudden everybody's going through the Central Coast and nobody can get anywhere. So I think there's a lot of like larger issues about what does this place look like 10 or 20 years from now. But I mean, in recent economic forum news, when they came to San Luis Obispo the last couple of times, these experts have said, you've got to keep Cal Poly people. You've got to get apartments in this area, because high density stuff does allow people to move in, and then you get to have the advantages of a lot of that brain power.
Yeah.
Currently, we're losing some of it. So I don't know. I think it's a big.
And I think, like, honestly, everybody who's watching this will have
their opinions too.
Yeah, right.
So
because you can argue both sides.
Sure. So start your own podcast.
Nice. If you don't agree with us, go somewhere else.
Exactly. Well, come on. Did you think I'd be any different on our podcast than I am?
Probably
I'm
not.
the same jerk I am all the time. Okay, so I think it's time for your recliner of rage. You remember the topic? You want to see what the topic was? You see it?
Oh, yes. Because
I think it fits in with what we were just talking about.
I mean, I told you.
And people have a lot of opinions, so you're probably wrong about this one. So go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to try not to be on my recliner of rage yet. We'll work up to that. So I'm going to be...
I'll relax. Go on.
I'll sit back and relax. So my little complaint today, and I'm a world-class whiner, is really this idea of no drive-thrus in San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
It's always been a thing. The only drive-thru I can ever remember, even as a little kid, was there was a McDonald's over on Foothill. That was gone by the time you were here, right?
No. We had it.
Yeah.
And remember, they said
grandfathered in.
Yeah, right. It was, and then they took it out, and then recently, I want to say that as of maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that location before it closed permanently is like, we want to drive through or we're closing, and I think they decided no.
Yeah, and it closed.
But then but for me, here's why what you're talking about. I think a really important point came up. So COVID happens. All of a sudden, we're not supposed to see anybody. We're supposed to pick up food, and in San Luis Obispo, you can't do it. Yeah. And the other thing,
we got curbside delivery, and we have all these apps.
But is that better for carbon neutrality? A bunch of guys driving all over the place, as opposed to you going whenever you need it.
So, I think that. I don't want to give too many opinions here, right? Because that's sort of anti-news.
Look, I think we can cover the story without you saying that, sometimes you just want a taco. That's fine.
So I think too that, if what's good for people, what's good for the area, what's good for, ultimately, I hope, this is my hope, is that people will do what's right? So we're not going to have cars running, people aren't going to be leaving their car. Honestly, just gas is too expensive to be sitting there running your cars, right? So if really carbon neutrality, if it's really to eliminate extra exhaust by sitting in the drive-thru, I don't know that actually happens. And I think what happens is that instead of like forcing people to get out of their cars, park, turn them off, I think, a lot of times I'll be sitting here at work and I just won't go get food, or I won't go shopping, I won't do something because there are no drive-thrus, right? So it might be helping with carbon neutrality, but it's also, I think, limiting people spending money as well.
So I think it goes to the point of choice. Anytime you try to say, we're going to make a better city by not allowing you to make a choice, what I think you want to do is, in a broader term, sell people on why they should do something and then have them stop doing it, like, convincing people that maybe smoking is bad for you, as opposed to taking all the cigarettes away.
Right, and outlying it.
Right. It's better to know and say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't ever want to do it. And that's fine.
So I'm going to throw my son under the bus here for a minute, just because it won't, that way I don't have to have my own personal opinion.
Figuratively.
Yeah, exactly. I probably wouldn't really want to do that. Thank you. I'm not going to literally throw him under the bus. Distract me.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So he said, and I think this is a good point, right? He says you don't have to mandate electric cars, because if electric cars were really truly better, then people would buy them. Right. And so what you have to do is, instead of mandating that people buy something they don't want, you have to increase its value enough, or make it appropriate for those people enough that they will buy them, and then it sort of takes care of itself, right? And so that's my argument about drive-thrus. Don't force the issue. Let people show them how to make the right choice, and let them make the right choice. Don't force them to make, quote unquote, the right choice, because then you're also forcing them to make choices that they wouldn't otherwise, right? I'm not going to spend my money here. I've even laughed at people who will come here, right? They come from different areas. They're shocked that we don't have any drive-thrus, that places aren't open 24 hours a day. And I have literally, this time, not figuratively, seen employees drive to Arroyo Grande or somewhere else just so they can go through a drive-through and don't have to get out of the car in San Luis Obispo. That negates the entire thing, right? Now they're driving more miles, they're spending more gas, they're wasting additional money because of the convenience.
Right. And I'm with you. I want drive-thrus. My thing is very kind of close to yours. It has to do with traffic. So I commute. I can't stand the fact that everybody just pulls onto the highway and never yields. Ever. I mean, there are people, they don't look. They are merging.
No matter what, yeah.
And we have the silly 2-lane 101. And, I guess going back to the drive-through thing, I think, if we expand it to 3 lanes, God forbid somebody's going to use it. And I think that's kind of the thing with drive-thrus too. Like, okay, but oh my God, it'll turn into Tokyo. I mean, we have 3 lanes.
This is a San Luis Obispo thing, though. Like, if you've lived here for a while and you've driven another, that doesn't happen in Atascadero. It doesn't happen in Paso Robles. It doesn't happen in Arroyo Grande as much. It's something about the way the on-ramps are too short.
Oh, I know.
In San Luis Obispo or something. Or they all come around.
Well, they corkscrew almost, right?
Right. So the cars aren't going as fast. It's just always a problem. Like, I try to remind myself, especially if I'm driving south. This is so weird. Why am I talking about this? But I know other people will think this too, right? Like, I get to about Monterey or even like maybe Grand or California, and I think to myself, I want to be in the fast lane just because I don't want to deal with the merging cars.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you're right. So in Atascadero, the exits are spaced. Some of them are miles apart. Yeah. So it's not a problem. But in San Luis Obispo, it's Monterey and Marsh, and it's bang, bang, bang. So yeah, it drives me nuts. And look,
why do we get so wound up about these things? Drive-through. Out of all the things we complain about, drive-throughs and traffic.
The funny thing is, one thing that I was thinking about complaining about was people who complain, but then I realized just how ironic it would be.
I'm never going to complain about people who complain.
Okay, so another one I had on our list is mistakes we make most days. We don't have to go through the whole list.
You mean word choice mistakes, grammar mistakes?
Just mistakes we make every day on TV. You brought up one that one of our people used. We won't throw any individual under the bus.
Okay, I'm not going to name names, right? But I said, okay, just a helpful little hint. I think you meant farther instead of further. And this particular person said, is there a difference? I was like, is there a difference? Yes, there's a difference. We had to go through this entire graph. So, and my big thing right now, well, I have many of them, but today is pronoun, verb, subject, agreement, right? So the football team or the football program, high school football, and then it'll be there. Yeah, that doesn't work. It's an it, right? Right. It doesn't. The grammar has to work. If you don't want if the grammar isn't going to work and you think it sounds weird, you got to recast the entire sentence. You can't just fake grammar, right? You can't just use interchangeably further and farther. You can't use interchangeably there and it's. You just can't.
Yeah. Fewer and less. That's my big one. And by the way, if you ever...
Or over and more than and over are 2 totally different words. They don't mean the same thing.
It's interesting when people come to watch newscasts and they come inside the studio. It is a language lesson because we have a bit where Richard will read and then we'll go into a sound bite. And if there's stuff wrong with the scripts, when we get into the sound bite and they turn the mics off, in that 15 seconds, we immediately talk to each other about, we got to fix that, we got to do that. And by the way, we never end up doing that. We're like, we should really fix that for the next newscast. Yeah. And then sometimes.
But having said that, because now that I complain about that, I will for sure tomorrow make about 3 or 4 grammar mistakes on the air because it is live, right? So you have to cut some slack.
Yeah.
When you're ad-libbing and you're reading along and you haven't necessarily pre-read that portion of the script, a grammar mistake is going to slip in there, and that's part of live television.
Yeah. So we both had, I would say like today wasn't our best performance day. I'm certainly not, for me, it wasn't.
So, and then it may, but see, I'm going to complain about you for me because you make it worse, right? I was sitting there at the, I don't remember if it was the 4, 5, or 6, but I was reading. No, I know it was the 6 because I'd already read it twice. So I was reading about our "If You Give a Child a Book" campaign, and it's all about reading and about how important reading is. And I must have made 6 reading errors in that one script. And then we get into a soundbite of somebody talking about it. What do you say? You're over there. One thing. Nice that you make all those reading errors during a reading story. Make it worse for me. I could have finished it up.
But by that point, well, here's what he does. And I'm glad that, and for those of you who are listening to this on audio, you're going to miss this part. But what he does is I'm over here, and he'll look at me like, how could I have messed that up so badly?
Because then I'm mad that you respond. Like I'm asking you to respond.
We're always like looking around things and trying to catch each other's vision. And when I make a mistake, sometimes I'll step off camera like, what in the heck am I doing?
By the way, I've gotten caught multiple times doing that, like not quite being off camera. Like, oh my gosh!
Today was pretty close. It was pretty close. Okay, so I thought we would wrap with something that was a thing that I did for a while. Do you remember existential questions? Like, yes. Okay, I'm going to propose. I'll just give you a couple of.
This is scary.
Okay, these are pretty easy ones. Okay. These are the easiest ones. Okay, pineapple on pizza.
No, I don't like to mix. I go off on this all the time, and I don't. Again, it's only episode 1, right?
Right.
So it's a 1.5 episode. Right. I don't want to make myself look too bad here, but there's some things I just don't think belong. Right? I don't think sweet things and savory things belong together. Like pineapple is sweet, it's dessert-like. It doesn't belong on a pizza, unless it's a dessert pizza, and then you can put whatever you want.
You know, and I know everybody's going to think that I'm just being contrarian because that's what you and I do all the time. I'll admit that I like it, but I'll say that I only like it occasionally. Like, I think if you had Canadian bacon pineapple pizza like 2 days in a row, yeah.
And then now somebody's going to see me eating pineapple on pizza and say, "You said right." But you know, if it's pizza, I'll eat it.
No, but here's
if I'm going to choose, I'm not going to choose.
But here's the thing: you can always get away. I say this all the time. I reserve the right to be a hypocrite at any moment that I choose.
Perfect. I reserve that right now too.
You've stated it. You've stated it. Now you own it. So that's good.
I mean, the other food combination that I'm just going to throw out there right now is, I don't think nuts and sweet stuff like candy go together. I don't like that.
Oh, you mean like trail mix? Like to have like some chocolate chips?
I would rather have nuts, or I'd rather have the sweet. But trail mix is okay. Again, I'm being hypocritical. But I don't think nuts belong in brownies. I don't think nuts belong in cookies. I don't like Babe Ruth candy bars.
Ah, you're nuts.
Thanks.
You're nuts. Those are all good things. Oh, but did you just say, oh, you meant Baby Ruth? Like Mounds bars. I think that's like one of the worst candy bars ever invented.
Why? I mean, a Mounds I don't want to.
I'll tell you what it is.
No, because the Mounds is fine. Almond Joy is not okay.
Because the foundation of it is the cheap coconut. I'm not even saying I hate coconut. These are like shavings from a lumberyard floor.
This is like what
they bleach white, and then they make it into
all the time.
And then
we're never going to agree on candy.
No, but here's the thing, and then they cover it with this awful chocolate. It's not even. It doesn't even border on decent chocolate at all.
Well, but some candy's good like that. You know, like all of Easter candy isn't good chocolate.
I'm just saying, like, if you're going to put your foot in the ground and say, "Oh boy, not that pineapple pizza, but yeah, the Mounds bar," I'm just saying you're on a precipice. That's all I'm saying about that. Okay. I'll tell you what. The visual one. I'll be right back. Hang on.
Oh God. Where are you going?
Well, because the next one it helps for visuals.
Are those the shoes you wore today?
Yeah. Flip flops. Okay. This is my most controversial take, and being that I said I reserve the right to be a hypocrite, I don't think adult people should be wearing these around.
Unless they're at the pool or the beach.
At pool or the beach. And I made that statement. And I've worn these to work the last 2 days in a row.
Especially
so I'm a hypocrite.
You are, because there's also a rule at this station.
Yeah, OSHA violations.
You're not supposed to have open-toed shoes and you're wearing flip-flops.
Well, only to get in the door, though. Like, literally drove down the Questa grade, walked in, and then I had to change for it.
You're reinforcing everybody's belief that really, like, behind the desk we're wearing shorts and flip-flops, and there you are showing your flip-flops.
But I'm like, right now I have dress pants on.
But yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't know if it was yesterday, 2 days ago, I saw you literally with, I think you had socks on.
You would literally and figuratively.
I know, I can't. I
you could have just said, I was wearing whatever. So go on.
You were wearing dress shoes with sports socks and the suit pants because your ankles were shot. Right. I thought you didn't have socks on at first. I thought, what are you doing?
I did end up putting the socks on later because I knew it looked weird. So here's the thing. I usually
don't wear sports socks, ankle socks.
So I usually come to work dressed in a suit because I just think it's dumb to change and all that stuff. And again, without naming names, but you can do the math. It's not that hard. In our dressing room, it is like a gym locker in there.
It's horrible. I've
actually had to put up on the floor.
I've had to put up signs reminding people.
And that is, by the way, we are so the same person. Somebody's got to put up a sign about that. Somebody's got to complain about that. We're like, why doesn't somebody start complaining? It's just us complaining. But yeah, the bathroom's a disaster.
It is a disaster.
Okay.
I'm a little ashamed of my last note too. I moved a bunch of, they were probably 50 or 60
But here's
ties.
the thing. For 3 days after his note, it was bliss.
It was beautiful.
It was bliss.
But I was so rude. Like, and you shouldn't do this. And I posted it on the mirror that said, you can find your ties that are now off the counter in the cabinet where they belong. But next time you can find them in the trash.
Have you looked in the cabinet?
Yes, there's about,
it's a pile. It's kind of like a junk drawer at home, but take that times a lot. Like everything in there is like that. So yeah, it's interesting. Last one, Michael Jackson, Frank Sinatra. You've got to pick. Got to pick one.
Frank Sinatra. As soon as that came out of my mouth, I'm like, maybe I regret that.
No, I'm going to go with you on that one. Classic. Everybody. I mean, I love Michael Jackson as well, but yeah, Frank Sinatra.
I think if you look musically or sort of the performer aspect or who Michael Jackson was outside of his personal life, then of course, it's kind of tough to argue with that. But I like people to be the full package.
The full package. Yeah, Frank, the thing is, Frank was in movies, cultural icon, and granted, Michael Jackson was too, but the old Rat Pack, Sammy Davis Jr., and Dean Martin, and yeah, kind of good stuff. Okay, so
how long have we been doing? What time are you keeping track of this time?
I think the fact that you have asked about time means time expired. Time is expired. That is it. We want your comments. We want your ideas. We actually used quite a few of your ideas in this episode. So for the next episode, let's do that. We'll even read viewer comments. If there's a good one.
We're not reading back. No, we might read.
No.
Because you should see what people say about us. Yeah.
That's true. People
might read them.
What's that like? And sometimes to get it off of our chest, sometimes it's wonderful because they can be laughably interesting.
Laughably mean.
Yeah. That too. Okay, folks, thanks a lot for tuning in, signing in, logging in. And if you have ideas about how to make this show better, keep it to yourself.